The Self-Publishing Formula is looking for beta testers for its 101 course on self-publishing. After the success of the Advanced Facebook Ads for Authors course, Mark Dawson is now creating a course aimed solely at authors who are starting out. If you're trying to launch your first book or trying to become commercially successful with your books, then this course is for you. It will cover everything you need to set yourself up for success as an indie author. Beta testers will get the course for free in return for feedback. You can sign up for your chance to become a tester at selfpublishingformula.com and we'll notify those selected. Hello and welcome to episode 29 from the Self-Publishing Formula.
Two writers, one just starting out, the other a bestseller. Join James Blatch and Mark Dawson and their amazing guests as they discuss how you can make a living telling stories. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Okay, Mark, here we are, episode 29, and we're going strong. It's the summertime, and a lot of people have been away, but we have been busy bees, haven't we? Doing lots of stuff, getting 101 ready. And for people who are already in your course, we should emphasise, I always emphasise this podcast is not about you having to be a purchaser of our course or anything. It's about the community and us helping each other, regardless of that. But we should mention for the people who are in the course, we've also released the YouTube ads for authors module this week. So that's going into action and we're looking forward to seeing some results. It's an exciting area, YouTube.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the YouTube course. Obviously, that's something that you've been responsible for coming out of SPF Labs. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to dig into that myself, and we've had some great responses from the beta testers so far as well, so all in all, very exciting stuff.
Yeah, and we've really used it properly in anger and got lots of data on it in terms of advertising our course, and the results there have been very strong, so we've been very pleased with it. And a lot of people are talking about YouTube as being the future now. There are lots of reasons why. I suppose one of the main reasons is that YouTube is actually ubiquitous. People say that about lots of social media, but there are certain demographics drawn to Twitter, to Facebook, to Instagram. YouTube is the one that your 12-year-old daughter through to your 85-year-old father will at some point during the day probably find themselves on. And also you can be in London, or you can be in Accra in Ghana, or you can be in Australia or Russia, and YouTube is there. So it really is the one that reaches parts other social media platforms don't reach, and that's important. So lots of exciting things happening in the future. We did a really interesting interview last week with Orna Ross, which is going to be our feature interview for today. And we talked a bit about new markets with her, Mark, when I was very interested in chatting to her about people who don't take advantage of translations, don't take advantage of foreign markets, because they're worried about the complexities of it. And she's a real advocate for breaking down those barriers. And we talked a lot about India, huge market, and Germany. But I know you've pretty much broken some of those markets already, haven't you?
No, not India yet. That's certainly something that I'm looking at. But no, I've published in Germany by a major publisher over there. Got Italian deals, Czech Republic, Denmark, I think, should be sorted now. And yeah, weirdly enough, I actually got my my accountant sent back the breakdown of last month's income, and there's now quite a healthy chunk every month coming from rights that I've sold, so foreign language rights in those markets, which is pretty encouraging. And yeah, with these other markets coming online, Brazil is another big one that I'm excited about. There's so much potential for growth as we go forward in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that's going to be a key area for us to understand, and I think it'll be very much part of the podcast landscape in the future. I'd really like to do more than one episode actually on this, because there are things to understand, do's and don'ts of it. And Orna's already started suggesting some key people that we can talk to for specific markets. You would think actually it's a bit of an easy win, isn't it? If you're sitting there and you've already got a good platform in the US and probably in the UK, an easier win for you, rather than writing your next couple of books and expanding what you're doing here. It's just to use your existing inventory in Germany. Germany and India are the two ones that are being mentioned by Orna. Of course, there are plenty of others. So half the world speaks Spanish, doesn't it? Or Mandarin and Spanish, I guess. But
yeah, absolutely. So no, I completely agree with that. If you've got an asset that you want to put to work for you, it doesn't make any sense to leave any rights on the table. So I do deals for the audio, there's film rights. Also, I've got a deal for quite an exciting deal with a big Hollywood producer for a couple of my series, and foreign rights as well. There's a lot of money that can be exploited from the properties once you finish them.
Okay, so time to hear from Orna then. So Orna is one of the founders and in charge of the Alliance of Independent Authors. This is a strong advocacy group. It's based in the UK, as you'll hear, but it works across the world with membership across the planet. And it's the organisation that is batting in your corner. Orna is a fascinating woman to listen to. She's a writer in her own right, as you'll hear. So without further ado, let's hear from Orna.
I'm an indie author primarily and director of the Alliance of Independent Authors. And it all happened by accident, is all I can say. I had, for various reasons, kind of decided to become a full-time writer back around 2010. And I did that for a while, and I was missing having a day job. I found that because I had always fitted writing into the edges of life, and it was kind of my stolen time, my magic time, that actually having all the time in the world wasn't suiting me very well. I was writing less than I had ever written before, which was really ironic and unexpected. And then I discovered self-publishing. And then very quickly, I was looking, I'm a bit of a joiner. I like groups, and I was looking for an association to join. And there wasn't one doing what I thought really needed to be done. And I was quite horrified at what I was seeing happening in the space. Where people, authors were really being taken advantage of all around the track, it seemed. And so I thought, we need an association and I need a day job. So the two kind of came together. So formed Alli as the Alliance of Independent Authors as a non-profit, because that was the way I wanted to go with it. Partly so that people could know it was trustworthy, but also because it seems to me that that's what an organisation like this should be. And yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been absolutely wonderful. An incredible group of authors have joined and continue to join. An amazing team has surfaced from that group, and we work really well together. We just finished a team meeting there before I'm speaking to you. We have great fun, and we just enjoy learning what we can and passing it on and looking out for the community in our way. And, there are lots of other organizations and other people who are doing that too in their way, like you guys and many, many others, and hooking in with them is also part of it too. And we have a remit that extends beyond our membership. Our reach is much wider than our membership, and we take the information and we take it out into the community through our Self-Publishing Advice Centre, which is full of all sorts of information. And we run an online conference for authors 3 times a year, Fringe to Frankfurt Book Fair, London Book Fair, and Book Expo America. And everything we do is free. And so it's no charge. And our main aim is, our core sort of aim is ethics and excellence in the self-publishing sector, in the entire sector, as much as we can influence that.
You talked about ethics, which is an intriguing concept, because you don't really have a homogenous industry anymore. You have an industry made up at its most fragmented ever. So what's your aim there in terms of when you talk about ethics?
Well, we have a code of standards. It's something that we feel, most people will be happy to align to. So there are two aspects of the ethical side of things. There is the publishing side. So one of the reasons I founded Alli was because of the horrific services that are out there and still are out there. John Doppler, our watchdog, calls them predatory. They're certainly profiteering, is their motives. They have no interest in books whatsoever. They have no interest in authors. They are simply about making money, and they don't mind how they do it. They've very heavy sales tactic, constantly upselling, picking vulnerable writers deliberately, so people of a certain age or people, and they have absolutely no interest in the quality of the writing or in anything except just getting one book published and promoted and maximizing the amount of money they can make from that. So we have a partner membership whereby we take in services that are doing a good job for writers and that are at the opposite end of the ethical spectrum, if you like, who are very author-centric in how they go about their business, who care about writing, who care, who know that publishing is a really important job in this world and care about how they do it. And they need to align with the Code of Standards in order to be admitted as a partner member. And then we can recommend them to our author members through our directory and our database and say, these are people who are good services. And they might be very small, one person freelance designer or editor working from home, all the way up to Amazon KDP and everything in between. So that's one side of it. But then about a year or two ago, we had quite an interesting development where one of our members, Jane Steen, became very concerned about ethics in the author community itself and the kinds of things that indie authors were prepared to do to promote their work. So the whole sock puppetry thing, people writing false reviews, getting their friends to write reviews, buying followers, and all the various ways you can kind of game the system on Amazon and all of these kinds of things. And so we added then, it was a campaign for a while, and I think it served its purpose actually, and we're moving on to a different campaign now, but it highlighted what was going on, and there were a lot of authors wanted a badge that they were able to put on their website at that time to say, I am an ethical author. And so we provided that, and the bookseller ran the campaign and included it in their author day and so on. So it's at that base kind of ethical level. And I think you talk about the variety within the community, and you're absolutely right. It's one of the things I love about it is that everybody's not only different, but really, because they're indie-minded and indie-spirited, really proud of their difference and really wearing it a lot of the time. What unites us is, when you have a community of any kind, is that kind of that softer stuff, what you believe in, what you think is right or wrong, how you go about approaching your job, and how you feel about your reader. I think that's really key to ethics, an understanding that we all are in service to the readers and not on some kind of ego trip of our own, though of course our egos are in there. As authors, we're not getting them out anytime soon.
No, nobody's come without an ego completely.
No, not possible, I don't think.
Well,
but, we serve the reader, that's the point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more really with the observations you make, and certainly in terms of organisations that are in the author's interest and those that aren't. I think hopefully one of the key differentiators, because we place ourselves here, is when the organisation has, as part of its makeup, lots and lots of contact with other authors. It becomes a community place, which certainly SPF does. Our Facebook groups are thriving, and that was one of the best things that happens in my daily routine is the contact with other authors. And I think organisations where that doesn't happen, and I have noticed them, where really they want a one-on-one relationship with you, and that's not, for me, that doesn't feel like self-publishing. Self-publishing is a bit of a campaigning organisation. It's got the feel of almost like a voluntary fraternity. Fraternity is a good word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's it leaves the girls out. But
yeah, sorry, yes. Well.
It's so hard to find the word, but it's such an interesting thing that you're raising, and I completely agree. It's that whole community thing. We say self-publishing and we call ourselves indie authors, but actually we cannot do it on our own. It's not possible for a good book to be made without somebody holding it up. It's that the old idea of it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a community to make a book, and the author's name goes on the book, but there are all sorts of people in there. And like yourself, the high point of my day is going onto the forum and finding out what's on people's minds and watching. I mean, it's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I started first. I won't say I take it for granted now, but I have become more accustomed to it. But you're reminding me of just how extraordinarily, amazingly fabulous it was to watch people coming in behind other people and helping. And it definitely is one of the most generous communities, bar none. And I think it was a surprise to people just how generous authors were. And of course, this always went on. If you read any of the biographies of of the writers who've come down to us, you see how much they relied on each other and how much they helped each other in every way. And this is just a new and an easier way. And the tribes are bigger, but it's the same thing that's always there in the reading and writing community. It's a fabulous community to be part of.
It is. It's very supportive, and frankly, it needs to be, because it's an isolating career, and you can feel underconfident and insecure about it most of the time. I think most, we talk about ego, but most writers have a fair dose of the opposite as well, which is feeling insecure about what they're doing, and you don't work in a workplace, so you don't get that kind of validation and so on. So you need that community. I think absolutely right. And so in both our case, our organisation and yours, we play a role in that. So when sort of fresh authors are coming in, what's your advice to them?
We kind of start where they are. There are so many different ways you can succeed, in inverted commas, as an indie author. So the first thing to find out is where people are in their own pathway and what they're looking for. So we have people who quite simply just want to write a book, and perhaps only for themselves, their friends or family. Now, we don't have a huge number of people who fall into that category, and certainly within the self-publishing space, there are far more authors out there who are like that than we tend to have in our organisation. That's just because we focus more on people who actually want to do this and make some money at it, or even better, make their living at it. And we have the odd person who wants to really make a killing at it. So, but most of our people fall kind of somewhere in the middle. So they want, first of all, they need to learn how to make a good book, make a book that serves the reader. And that means good design, so that people know what the book's about and what genre it falls into. It means good editing. We all know now, I think, much more than we did 3 or 4 years ago, what it takes. We bring people through what we call the 7 processes of publishing. So very often an author thinks producing the book is what they think of as publishing. So the production end of things, the formatting, the editing, the putting the covers on a print book and the getting it out there. But that's only one. That's production. That's only one of the phases. There's also marketing and promotion and running an author business. So, and then the whole area of publishing rights and selling rights and all of that, which is something that we go into more with our professional members. Our professional members are people who have to have sold 50,000 copies or more in the last 2 years. Up at that end, they're more concerned with the running a business kind of thing, time and money, how to, write faster, better, reach their readers more effectively and get their rights sold. So at that end, we have a literary agent, and we work with IPR license and PubMatch and people like that who help people to find rights buyers and so on. And at the other end, where people are just coming in or preparing a book for self-publishing, that's our associate membership. These are people who haven't published before, either through the trade press or in any way, and they're kind of learning how to put that book together. So I think you've got the amazing kind of trip of putting a book together, fiction or non-fiction. That in itself is an incredible learning journey. And then you've got, of writing it, putting the words together. And then you've got putting the digital artifact together or the printed book. And then you've got the job of reaching your readers and finally the selling rights. So we're there for the long. Each of those is a journey in itself. Each of those is a learning by doing journey. And there are people who can help you and support you in different ways. You need to work out what support you need and where you're going to get it and what bits you're going to do yourself. And so it's a process. It takes time. And it's just now we're getting to the point of seeing people who came in who kind of were looking around thinking, I haven't got a clue. I don't even know what is Amazon KDP? What is that? Who are now, up and running and leaving the day job and selling well and really, really happy. And that's amazing.
In terms of the practical side of that, how does that manifest itself? Is it peer-to-peer help within the Alliance?
There's an awful lot of informal peer-to-peer help, but what we do is we have a self-publishing advice centre. So that is run by our members for the wider community. So within that, the people share their knowledge, their information, and their expertise. We have small and large forums where people get together and, help each other and train. But we don't have an actual mentoring, one-to-one mentoring system in place. But I think one of the things we would like to do is set up, genre one-to-one, where we would match somebody who's actually doing well at something that somebody else wants to get into. So that is something that we're thinking about a little bit further down the track. But it's the forums, really. It's all online because our members are everywhere, and it's the connections that are then made, and people break off into their own informal groups. And then we also have live groups. So we have people who we don't actually run them at all. We don't take any responsibility for them. But one member in an area is saying, any Alli members in this vicinity, let's get together once a month, and we facilitate that. We don't run them, they run them, they look after them. And, they're not it's a very loose sort of arrangement, but we do manage them for them, the administration end of it, just through meetup.com, so that they can know what's on when and are able to attend it. So there's some of the ways in which it happens.
You mentioned geography just then, Orna. Obviously, you're in London today. We should mention you're Irish. I think some people will be able to tell that for your accent. A nation of some fine writers from history, of course. But the Alliance is very much international.
Oh, yeah, completely. It's global and was from day one. And I think actually being Irish is a big advantage there, I have to say, because we're not because of our history, of immigration, and because I myself have lived away at various stages, gone back to Ireland, lived away again. But also just being a small nation, you have bigger windows on the world. The average person from the UK or the US who just doesn't realise how much they are in their own world, So I think it has been very useful to be Irish in this job. And also it has been amazing to watch what can happen across those borders, because that's one of the things that I think is really useful is the way in which, say, we have somebody in the US who wants to break into the UK or to Australian market or whatever, the way in which members can help each other to do that. And we can have cross collaboration, people putting themselves at the end of each other's books and so on, in different countries. And very often we'll get somebody on the forum who says, will you take a look at my page and see what my price is over there or whatever, so you've got all that going on. So it's very global. Having said that, the majority of our members are almost 50% of our members now are US. And I think it's about 40% Europe, and then roughly 20% the rest of the world. So and I don't see that balance has kind of settled in now. When we started, we were about a third, but now it's there. So I think that's where it'll be for a while.
It would be interesting having a look at those figures in say, a year's time and 2 years' time. I mean, there's no question that America is a very vibrant place for self-publishing, and I'm not sure whether it's cultural or just there's more of an entrepreneurial, natural spirit there or whatever, but it's an exciting environment to be in. But one of the things on our list, and it's unfortunately, you get so busy that it's not going very far further up the list, but I really want to have a serious look at India. I think that it's a huge potential. There's 1 billion people. The prices, as you say, you mentioned, getting some advice on pricing in different markets. That's a sort of area you need to look at very carefully when you move into somewhere like India. But I'd be very interested. We're getting a lot of contacts now from Indian writers. I think vice versa, there's a big potential market of English readers in India, English language readers in India who have a voracious appetite.
There's no doubt about that. We have a number of Indian members, actually, and we have an Indian ambassador, Rasana Atreya, and also a partner member whom I think you may know, Ritesh Kala, who is very dedicated. So I agree with you. It's definitely a definite growth area. And the other one, I think, for people to watch is the German market at the moment. I think there is space now for English language in Germany, self-publishing, but also it's the first port of call, I think, for translation.
Even ahead of Spanish?
Well, just in that it's warmer market. I know that Spanish is a huge language, and the whole Californian phenomenon, in the South US states, makes Spanish attractive in that way. But what I feel is that the German market is really warm now. It's really warming up. And 2 years ago, people were talking about it, but I can see this year that sort of bit of a tipping point that we saw in the UK about 2 years ago, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I think it's one to watch. If you're thinking of getting a translation, I would say German first. But I mean, it depends. It totally depends on what you're writing as well.
Yeah. Well, I can see a couple of future podcast episodes already going down onto my list here. I think breaking India is one. Yes, I think foreign language publishing for English writers is something that a lot of writers, it's a huge potential area that's underexploited at the moment, but because of the complexities, at least the perceived complexities.
Exactly. And it's something we're looking really closely at, because rights in publishing has always been almost treated like the black arts. Nobody really knew what they did over there. And it's all about contacts. But it turns out that in the land of email, contacts are not actually that difficult to make. And while trade publishers would say to you, oh, it's so important to meet them and, to get warm and press the flesh and so on. Well, maybe, but if the book is right, it tends to sell. So what's really key for that is that you understand the publisher and what they publish and what they're looking for in their territory. Once you get a grasp of that, it's actually relatively easy to get the sale. And we have some members who are doing some really interesting things there with just an assistant, somebody who has no experience in rights, just takes the orders and it's a very admin heavy, but it's interesting. Lots of interesting things happening there. So yeah, let me know when you're thinking of it and I can get you some interesting people.
For sure, Orna. We should give out some practical details, shouldn't we? If people have had their interest piqued by the possibility of being a part of the Alliance for Independent Authors, how do they go about joining and where do they find you?
Well, we're at allianceindependentauthors.org, and our Self-Publishing Advice Centre, if you just want to kind of dip in your toe and see what we're all about, is selfpublishingadvice.org.
And I know you had a presence at the London Book Fair. We bumped into each other there. And do you go to other worldwide fairs and conventions?
There are 3 publishing fairs that get our attention. I mean, we could be on a constant kind of circle of fairs, and it would be lovely and interesting, and we'd meet lots of lovely authors, but it's not possible. So we focus on the 3 biggies, which is London Book Fair, obviously as we're here in London, Frankfurt, because it is the largest rights fair in the world, and Book Expo America to keep us in touch with what's going on in the American market. And what we do then is we run our Fringe, our Indie Author Fringe event alongside each of those fairs. So we bring the fair, as it were, to the indie authors who can't go themselves, tell them, what we've found out there, what's happening, what the trends are, what's happening in trade publishing as well, because that is relevant to indies, particularly those who are thinking of selling their rights. And also, though, in recognition of the fact that a lot of the author work done at the fairs is not particularly clued into self-publishing, and most of our members could actually give these talks rather than go and attend them. We put out the sort of information that we feel is missing from the fair online, so that people can kind of keep up with the latest and what's happening. It's a great way for us to be in touch with a lot of people all at once, and we got some good tape there from Mark when we were there. You came to our rescue on the audio, if you remember. So yeah, fairs are a great way for us to speak to lots of people all at once and find out what is current and what's happening, because self-publishing changes so very rapidly. It's the advice we were giving a year ago, some of it still stands, but some of it doesn't. And even the services that were here in the UK a year ago, some of them are not here now, and so on. So the fairs are great to kind of keep in touch with that and keep ahead of it, keep ahead of the information stream.
And on that subject, I was a little surprised at the London Book Fair how sort of tucked away the indie authors seemed, the sort of the indie world. It was certainly, in percentage terms, a pretty small number for the footprint of the whole place. And I couldn't really work out, looking at the big traditional publishing stands, whether there were people there who were very savvy as to the changing industry and positioning themselves so that they can survive that, or whether they were rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, do you get a sense from that side of things going back?
Oh, I think it's the latter, sadly. I mean, I see more open doors in trade publishing now. One of the campaigns we run is Open Up to Indie Authors, and that campaign is specifically about, explaining and educating the publishing industry, the literary festivals, the competitions, people, what is actually going on and how you are missing out, and how, this is what we need to do to kind of meet you, and this is what you need to do to meet us in the middle. And we get a lot of resistance. It's really surprising how many people will cut off their nose to spite their face because they don't like self-publishing, or, so there is a lot of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic going on there. The traditional publishers are generally going to the fairs as they always have done. And that world is carrying on as it always has done in the main. They're picking up some learnings from self-publishing authors connected to reader, reaching the reader mainly. But we had at our last Fringe, it was at the London Fringe Fair, we had a young woman from one of the trade houses who had kind of left, and she had left through sheer frustration because she just was being constantly laughed out of the place because she was thinking about readers rather than retailers. So there's that whole thing of the customer base, and trade publishing thinks of the bookstore as the purchaser, whereas we as authors think of the readers. So I think they're beginning to kind of, for example, have a website where they can sell books, and these kind of radical ideas. Yeah. They're beginning to look at Facebook ads as an author would use them, and all of that kind of thing. They're beginning to support their authors to make those warm contacts with readers and so on. But it's very, very, very slow. And the business is not surviving as it was. It can't. It simply can't. It will have to change. How it's going to change exactly is anyone's guess. I don't think anyone's quite sure what's going to happen there. In terms of the author presence at fairs, London's the best, James,
right.
By a mile. It's so much better than anywhere else. They make a space for authors. It's nice and roomy. There's plenty of space around it. There are tables where you can sit. At BEA, to sit down at one of those tables beside the author space, you would have to buy it, for $1,500. Yeah, they've a long way to go. I mean, I think London Book Fair's motto is authors at the heart of the business. And I think every author that sees that it's kind of hollow laughter, because authors are not at the heart of the trade publishing business for sure. And that's one of the reasons why self-publishing is so vibrant, However, I think we will see a meeting in the middle. I think there'll be a lot more blurring of lines. We're seeing people who started off self-publishing, who then got a trade deal and were delighted with that, and who are now coming back out either to exclusively self-publish again, or else to do some kind of mixed arrangement where they sell some of their rights or rights to some of their books but not all, and all that kind of thing. So I think we're going to see the two coming together much more in the future, and eventually we probably won't be able to really tell one from the other. And what will distinguish people, I think, is not your modus, of publication, but your attitude. And to me, it's all summed up in that word indie. It's that independent spirit which isn't seeking validation, is seeking something else, which is either that connection with the reader or your own creative response and, what you're producing and your own relationship with that, or to make a living or to make a lot of money, to commercially succeed. But it's an independence of mind that isn't kind of saying, publish me, please, somebody tell me I'm good. I know we all have those moments, and we always will, but to live from that place is very unhealthy. And I think it's one of the reasons why, we needed something to come along like this, and we've got exactly what was needed.
Yeah, I mentioned in the interview there, Mark, that we bumped into Orna at the London Book Fair. Actually, she feels that she's in my debt because I sorted out some recording in a session at the last minute. I think the guy recording their session had let them down, and I ran over to the desk with my equipment and plugged it in. But we're always that's a small example of how we're always happy to help each other, and that's the whole point of that organisation. And I know you're quite pro Alli as well, the Alliance of Independent Authors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I've had all kinds of useful information from them, help from them now and again, and I'm really for places where authors can hang out, swap information, talk to other authors, people going through the same things that they're going through, and Alli is one of the best places on the internet for that.
Yep, okay, well, we gave the web address away in the interview, but I'll just repeat it now, allianceindependentauthors.org. And you can go there, you can find out about being a member. There are various levels of membership, but it's, as I say, it's an organisation that works for you, and it's good to support it back as well. Great. Okay, we're going to go back to authorship for next week. So, although, of course, Orna is in fact an author, but we are going to be talking to quite a famous and quite a sought-after guest in terms of podcasts. We're going to be talking to A.G. Riddle.
So yes, A.G. Riddle, Jerry Riddle, is the author of The Atlantis Gene, a million-selling indie author, film deals, foreign rights, the works, and a really interesting story, very smart guy, good writer, and this will be something that I think people will be looking forward to listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's next week. That will be number 30. Thank you so much indeed for joining us this week. It's been our pleasure, as always, and we'll speak to you again next Friday.
You've been listening to the Self-Publishing Formula podcast. Visit us at selfpublishingformula.com for more information, show notes, and links on today's topics. You can also sign up for our free video series on using Facebook ads to grow your mailing list. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.